So it was basically your book that pushed you toward the business as well.
Yeah, it was writing about the entrepreneurs. If these guys could do it, surely I could do it.
That book is the main culprit.
Yeah, that's right.
Hello everyone, my name is Ali. I am the CEO of Al-Burraq Technologies. This podcast is presented to you from the platform of techstarmagazine.com. And today we have a very good tech star, Paul. Thank you so much for joining us. And we are looking forward to talk to you, and we will talk to you on different areas of your expertise, your experience, everything related to you, and some fun things as well related to your journey. Thank you so much, Paul.
Ali, great to be with you. Thanks so much.
Okay, Paul, it will be good if you can give some of your introduction first, right? And so that the audience know who you are, and then we will take forward from there.
Sure, Ali. Well, it's great to be with you. I'm Paul Shapiro, the CEO and co-founder of The Better Meat Co. The Better Meat Co. is a food technology company based in Sacramento, California that harnesses the power of fermentation in order to grow very meat-like, high-quality, whole food, proteinaceous ingredients that we sell on a B2B basis, a business-to-business basis, to other food companies so they can make better meat. In addition to The Better Meat Co., I also am the author of a book called Clean Meat, How Growing Meat Without Animals Will Revolutionize Dinner and the World, which is a book that chronicles the race to bring the world's first slaughter-free meat onto your dinner table. And I also am the host of a podcast called the Business for Good podcast, which really spotlights companies that are making money by making the world a better place. So it's a real fun time to do these three things, and I'm glad to be chatting with you, Ali.
That's a very heavy introduction, I must say that. Okay, so you have done a lot of research as well. Tell us about that. What was that time look like in which you researched about this plant-based proteins and all the stuff related to that?
Sure. Well, let's just back up to the broader picture, because the planet is not getting any bigger. Humanity's footprint on the planet is getting a lot bigger, but the planet itself is not getting any bigger. And one of the primary ways that we feed that footprint is through our food print, principally in the amount of meat that we eat. It's no longer a secret that raising animals for food just takes up a huge amount of land, water, greenhouse gas emissions, and more. It also causes unspeakable animal cruelty. And so the question then becomes, if we know that using animals for food is so inefficient, it's so unsustainable, it's so inhumane, what can we do? Because meat demand is rising. It's rising in China, it's rising in India.
It's rising everywhere. Everywhere meat demand is increasing day by day.
Exactly. Virtually every place on Earth, with a couple of exceptions, meat demand is increasing. And so the projections are that we're going to need to produce twice as much meat in the not too distant future if trends continue. So unfortunately, as I said, the planet just isn't getting any bigger. So how are we going to satiate the demand for meat that humanity seems to crave? One way would be just to deforest the rest of the planet, cause dramatically more wildlife extinctions, and heat up the planet even faster. Another way, though, is to divorce the meat experience from animal slaughter. In the same way that we stopped using whales to light our homes, and instead we switched to kerosene and eventually electricity. Or in the same way that we stopped using horses for transportation and switched to bikes and eventually cars. Can we find alternatives to raising and slaughtering animals for food that give humanity the same experience that it loves, that experience of eating meat, but in a way that is far more efficient, far more humane, and far more sustainable? And I think the answer is yes, that we can recreate the meat experience without animals. And there are a number of ways to do this. Just like there are lots of ways to get energy without fossil fuels, like wind, solar, geothermal, etc. There are many ways that you can get the meat experience without animals. That can come from plant proteins, it can come from fungi proteins, it can come from animal cell culture, and even combinations thereof. So I'm very optimistic that humanity will liberate itself from this addiction to animal slaughter that we have, and instead figure out ways to sustainably feed ourselves without destroying the planet in the process.
Right. So when you started working on this thing, right, planet-based proteins, when you started working on these things, from the beginning, you were projecting it that you are going to build a business out of it, or you were doing it on your nature of protecting the planet, and then eventually you start thinking about it that it can be a great business. So what was the initial thought and the process which enabled you to turn this idea into a business?
I had been, really on fire about this issue of how we're going to convert from a meat industry based on animals to one that is based on non-animal sources for many decades. But it wasn't until around 2015 or 2016 that I started thinking maybe technology is going to do more than just, try to persuade people to eat fewer animals and to enjoy more plant-based meals. And at that time, I wasn't sure how I could contribute. I don't have an MBA. Wasn't a microbiologist or a food scientist. I wasn't sure what I personally could do on this particular score. And so I decided, well, maybe I'll write a book on the topic, and that will get the people who do have MBAs and who are microbiologists or food scientists to go into this field. So rather than going to work at, let's say pharmaceutical companies or biomed companies, maybe they'll go with these instead. And I also was hoping to attract investors to this space. So I pitched a book. I got very fortunate, and Simon & Schuster published the book. It's called Clean Meat: How Growing Meat Without Animals Will Revolutionize Dinner and the World. And that book chronicles the entrepreneurs, the investors, the scientists who are all racing to build the world's first slaughter-free meat. And one of the things that I recognized in the research and writing of that book is that just like with any real crisis, there's real opportunity. And here you have this crisis of how we're going to sustainably feed humanity into the future. And these people who I was profiling were not only seeking to solve the problem, but they're not charities. They're seeking to make money as well. And I started thinking, well, if these people could make money by making the world a better place, and a lot of them didn't really have the backgrounds that I would think were natural fits for being an entrepreneur. Many of them were just out of college, actually. In fact, they had less experience than I did. And so I had a choice. The book came out. It did much better than I would have anticipated. And so I had a choice. I could either continue writing about the people who I thought were going to solve this problem that had animated my life for more than 2 decades, or I could just become one of them myself. And I chose the latter. And that's why I started the Better Meat Co. in 2018.
So it was basically your book that pushed you toward the business as well.
Yeah, it was writing about the entrepreneurs that led me to think, geez, if these guys could do it, surely I could do it. Who knows if that's true? But that's what I thought at the time, at least.
That book is the main culprit.
Yeah. That's right. That's actually the truth.
In this journey, have you not heard anything like "How dare you" from any meat lover? When you say that divorce the meat, they should say, "How dare you?"
That's so funny. I'll be, of course, people will say that. There's some people who really like the status quo, either because they feel comfortable with it or because they make money from it. But the history of our civilization is that one technology displaces another. As I mentioned, we used to harpoon whales in order to light our homes with whale oil. Then we switched to kerosene. Then the kerosene industry was largely decimated by electricity. We used to actually use whale bones for corsets for women. And then eventually spring steel was invented, and that rendered that industry obsolete. Even in the non-animal space, you can look at film as one example. You go back to the 1990s, and for more than a century, film was print film. Photographs meant print photographs that you had to produce in the darkroom.
Everything goes through a journey, and then we move forward on the new technologies, on the new tech. And that I completely second that we have to keep evolve ourselves.
Right. And, Ali, many of the times these new technologies seem foreign to us at first, but eventually we come to recognize their superiority and we switch to them en masse, and we hardly remember what life was like prior to the new invention. You think about even the transition away from horses, who for thousands of years were our best source of transportation, to the point where originally we didn't have what were called cars. We had what they called horseless carriages. Like the first cars weren't called cars, they were called horseless carriages. And even today, we still measure a car's strength in what we call horsepower. So, but many of us are glad not to use horses anymore, just like we're glad to be able to get our photos instantly rather than having to wait hours or days on end to get them. Many of us are quite happy to no longer have to go to the video store and hope they have the thing that we wanted. We can just stream instantly at our homes. And very few people are crying for the laid off employees at Blockbuster when we're binge watching something on Netflix. Very few of us are crying for Kodak, which had to declare bankruptcy because they didn't get in on the digital film trend when we're snapping photos instantly on our phones. And while it may seem like, well, yeah, it's so hard to stitch away from an industry that is entrenched, like the animal slaughter industry.
From 2015 till now you are at a very good level in your company, right? Were you anticipated at that time that you will make it up to this far?
There's a very high mortality rate for startups, especially an infant mortality rate for startups. It's really upwards of 90%. Now, in the last several years, it's been a pretty good market for startups, and so there's been a lot of capital available. Today, markets are drying out, and so it's harder to raise capital. So you see more and more companies doing layoffs. You see companies going under. And so I think that, for the first several years of our company, we're existing in a time where it was a pretty founder-friendly environment that made it hard to fail because you could raise more capital. Today, we're going to see who are the people who actually can succeed. Because today, in 2023, it's a very bad market for startups. Unless you're in the AI space, you don't have people throwing money at you like they were, let's say, 2 or 3 years ago. So I think now we're going to see, who's for real. Because in a time of plenty, people can feast. In a time of famine, you see who can really survive.
What was the hardest time in your journey of the meat company?
The Battery Co. has existed for 5 years, and there's been all types of really difficult events for us, as with any startup. A lot of the times I
share some of the experiences, some of the insights, right?
I'm very happy to. So, you think about let me put it to you this way. When I talk to other founders, so often people will say to me, I'm like, oh, how are things going? I'm like, oh, it's great. We're killing it. And I always think, man, you're lying. Why don't you just tell the truth? There's good things. Of course, there's good and promising things, but there's always hard things. The nature of early stage startups is that it's a very difficult thing to do. And so, that could mean that, for me, one of the toughest lessons has been to recognize that people aren't always going to do what they say they're going to do. If somebody says, I'm going to make this investment, even if they sign a term sheet saying they're going to make an investment, it doesn't mean that they are going to make the investment. If somebody says they're going to sign a contract to purchase product from you, and they want even quantities to be stipulated, it doesn't mean that that's going to happen.
Thank you so much, Paul, for your time. Now, as final remarks, let us know, where do you see your company in the coming years?
Ali, the key for the Better Meat Co.'s success is to scale up. We have created fantastic technology that does a really stellar job of recreating the meat experience without animals. However, what we can produce is only really pilot material, right? We cannot produce the millions and even billions of pounds of mycoprotein that we need in order to make a dent in the problem that we are trying to solve. So the key for us in the coming years is to not just build fermenters that are a few stories tall, but to build fermenters that are more like 10 stories tall, and to build a lot of them. And so for us, the sky is literally the limit when it comes to creating a more humane and sustainable meat industry that is not reliant on the exploitation of animals.
Okay, thank you so much, Paul. We have to keep it short today. I know you have a lot more to say. If you like our conversation with Paul Shapiro, do let us know in the comment section. Subscribe to our channel so that we keep bringing more tech stars to your screens.